Hello and welcome to Kim's Wellness Space, the podcast. I am so very pleased to see you or have you here listening to me, depending on whether you're listening or whether you're watching on YouTube. So I'm Kim. I'm from Kim's Wellness Space over on Instagram, which is mainly where I hang out. This is episode 42, and this is just a roundup really of 2023. I think it's always nice to finish the year looking back on all the great things that have happened, and you guys listening to my podcasts has been something that's been a really big tick for me in my box. When I first started doing the podcast, I had no idea if anyone was going to listen. I didn't know if I was going to get past the first episode. It had been on my to-do list for about 3 or 4 years. And here we are, end of 2023. I am well and truly into my second year and I am loving it. And so thank you. I want to say thank you to you if you're brand new and this is the first episode that you've come across and you're listening to. I hope you stay to the end. And I want to say thank you to you if you have listened to all my episodes, or if you've listened to 3 or 4, or if this is the second one. However many episodes you've been here for, whether it's watching on YouTube or whether it's listening on your preferred platform, thank you. If it wasn't for you guys listening and giving me feedback, then I probably still wouldn't be here because it would just be me chatting to myself, wouldn't it? So massive thank you from me to you for the support this year. So when I started chatting on this podcast all those episodes ago, it was just me chatting. I wanted to share the power of yoga. I wanted to share how yoga had changed my life. I wanted to share how I believe you could live a yoga life, not just doing yoga a couple of times a week and making shapes with your body, but actually being in that essence of what yoga actually is, you know, how we act when we're off the mat and the things that we learn about ourselves and we can take forward off of the mat. And it's been so transformative to me. And I just wanted to share that with everybody. And so that's how it started. And this year was no different to last year. I was chatting by myself, just sharing my words of wisdom, sharing my experiences, sharing things that I'd learned in the hope that maybe someone out there needed to hear what I had to say and it helped them. And then in May, it all changed. And if you are relatively new and maybe you're watching this on YouTube, May is when I went onto YouTube. Before that, it'd just been purely audio. But in May, it changed because we booked ourselves to go and do a Tough Mudder. And if you don't know anything about that, please go back and find the episodes that are to do with Tough Mudder, because it was a huge part of 2023 for me. And it changed a lot of things. It changed a lot of things about me, how I viewed myself, how I thought about myself, but it changed the podcast. It changed from just being audio to being on YouTube. It changed from me just chatting to having guests. And oh my God, I'm so pleased that I made that change and that I embraced it, even though it was really scary, because it's just opened another level of world to me that I obviously knew was there but hadn't experienced. And I'm so pleased that I listened to my eldest son, who was saying to me, come on, Mom, you can do this. We can do one together. We'll talk about Tough Mudder. People will want to hear. And I was really nervous. Even though I was talking to my son, I was really nervous that first time I had a guest, because I don't know, the pressure just felt different when you're just here by yourself chatting away. Well, I chat to myself all day long anyway, so you know, it was no different. But to have someone else on the screen, to interact, to chat, that probably doesn't make much sense, knowing that I was talking to my son. But it wasn't that. It was the fact that it was being recorded and I was putting our words out into the world. And I don't know, it just comes with it came, doesn't come now, but it came with a lot of preconceived judgments from me onto me, which I have now let go of. So I'm so pleased that he encouraged me to do that first joint episode with him. And I have made a list of all of my lovely guests because I don't want to miss anyone out and I want to do it in the order. And actually, when we finish chatting, I will make sure that you can go and look at the show notes and every single guest and their episode will be down there. So if you haven't listened to one of them and you think, oh, that's interesting, I'd like to listen to that one, then you'll be able to find it really easily. So after I'd chatted with Ben in May, I then spoke with Sarah Snape, who is a confidence coach, and I count her as one of my friends. We did meet this year, and yeah, she's lovely and she is brilliant. Her coaching is unique, and you definitely need to go check her out. I then spoke to Emma, who is a social media manager, who had some brilliant words of wisdom, and not just about how to use an app, but actually how that affects us in our everyday and how we can make sure that we don't let it overwhelm us, I guess. Then I spoke to Liz, who is a soul purpose coach. Again, amazing lady doing some fabulous work. Then I spoke to Michelle Carney, who was and is a fellow Tough Mudder, who is also a really, really inspiring woman, has done so much good in the world. You definitely need to go back and listen to that episode. Then I chatted with Ben again because we were getting closer and my training was being increased and we were getting ready for Tough Mudder. Then I spoke to Kirsty Sinclair, who is an astrologer, and she helps women who are burnt out and how to negotiate that whole world when you're completely drained and don't think you've got anything left in the tank. Then I did my third one, my third Tough Mudder one, I want to say. But that time I did it with Ben and Michelle. So there were three of us on the podcast. And that was what happened when we did it. So everything before that had been the build up and what even was Tough Mudder. But the one that I did with Ben and Michelle, it's lovely. It's quite a long one compared to a lot of the other ones that I do. But we just relived our experience. And if you want to find out about Tough Mudder, then definitely go back and listen to them. If you are feeling like, oh my God, that's something I could never do, go listen to that episode where we were chatting about our experience on the day, because it was priceless. And I am so pleased that we did it. And that is a brilliant episode. They're all brilliant episodes, but that is a good episode. Then I spoke to Evie, who's a sleep consultant, which was super, super interesting. And if you have been here any amount of time, you know that I'm always banging on about how important our sleep is. So I was so pleased that she was able to be a guest. Then I spoke to Farz, who's a Bollywood dancer and a lady that is living with lupus. And she was really pleased to be able to come on and talk about how she deals with lupus in her everyday, but how actually, she's running a dance studio. She's a teacher. Very inspiring lady. Then I spoke to Becci, who is an author, and her book is out in the world if you want to go find it. Again, all of the information will be in the show notes, but she is a wonderful human being. Then I spoke to Jen, who's a wellness coach and helps us overcome our stresses that of just, life is full of stress. And if we find ways that we can deal with it, then amazing. Then I spoke to Hilary, who's a nutrition coach, and that was all about plant-based eating, which is something also very, very close to my heart. So I love talking to her. Then I spoke to Megan, who's an empowerment coach. Then I spoke to Alex, who's a fellow yoga teacher, and we had a most amazing conversation about menopause because, let's face it, all of us women have to go through it. And actually, yoga can really help. But even when we've got all of those tools at our fingertips and we teach it and we know it, it's still really tricky when we're living it. And so that was a brilliant conversation. And then my last guest that I've had this year was Siri, who, again, beautiful soul, had a story that needed to be told. And I felt so privileged that she chose to share her words with me and her story. And I think that we will definitely be talking again next year, because um, she had been through so much this year, and everything is just beginning to change. And yeah, a follow-up episode I think will be coming for that, but that also is amazing. So as I said, I will make sure that in the show notes all of the episode details are listed with my guests. Massive shout out and thank you to every single one of my guests this year. You have filled me with joy. I have absolutely loved talking to you all, and it's made it super interesting for me, so I hope it's been super interesting for all of you guys listening. And so next year, I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. I will probably start the year just you and me chatting. I always have a lot to say, and the more I do it, the more I grow in confidence with sharing what I truly believe can make us feel well. And I just want to keep on sharing it. So I definitely will be back next year. I definitely have more things to share and to tell you. And I want to have more guests. So, if there's somebody that you think that it would be great to hear chat with me, then, drop into my DMs on Instagram and let me know who it is, and I can try and get them on as a guest. But everybody, every single person that is having a life experience has a story to tell and can help somebody else. And that's so exciting. It's so exciting. And, one of the things I learned when I was doing my teacher training was actually not while I was doing it, but kind of as I did it and as I moved into actually teaching out in the world, it's you become very aware that you're always the student, because I was always learning. I love learning. If you've been here, you'll know that I'm always learning. I love learning. Um, but we can always learn. We can always learn. It doesn't matter how much we think we know something. And when you teach people or coach people, which is what I'm spending most of my days doing, I'm still learning from them. I'm learning from their reactions, from their actions, from their take and their perspective. And that's why I think this podcast is so exciting, because I might say something to you that you have heard 100 times, but I might say it in just a slight different way. And all of a sudden, everything clicks and changes. And you'll be like, yes, I get that now. And that's brilliant, isn't it? That's absolutely brilliant. And the same for me. Like, when I chat with people, they might say something and I'm like, yes, that really resonates with me today. Or, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. So, yeah, I digress a little, but I'm definitely going to be back in 2024. I'm going to have more of these conversations, and I will be sharing more of my words, more of my experiences, more of my thoughts, in the hope that we can just keep sharing and sharing, so that we all have the same knowledge, that we can all feel amazing. Because at the end of the day, why would we not want to feel amazing? And so I was just looking at my notes, because I knew that I was going to distract myself today and go off on a tangent, and then I'd forget what I wanted to say. And there were certain things that I wanted to say. And on that note of sharing words and why we're here, why I'm recording this podcast, why maybe you're listening to this podcast, is for inspiration. I am hoping that I will inspire you to go experiment, try things, see what works for you. And I am equally inspired by the messages that I get back from you guys when you listen. Don't think that if you leave a review or a comment on something that it's not read. Absolutely is read. I always try and reply to everybody that I can. So if I have missed you, I apologize. But it's really important. The feedback is great. And I get inspiration from the people that I talk to. And so I hope that I am able to inspire you. And actually, I know that I inspire because people have told me, which is lovely. And it's a bit like when I wrote my book. I remember saying to somebody, if one person reads it, and I've shared my knowledge with one person and it helps that one person, then I've succeeded. I don't need to sell 1 million copies. One copy means I've succeeded. And it's the same with the podcast. When people contact me and say, "Oh, I listened to such and such an episode and it was amazing and I went and tried it." Oh, that's just lovely. I've had people message me telling me that they have now started yoga practice and they practice regularly because when they listened to how I described yoga, something changed in them and they were able to do it. I I don't really want to this podcast isn't really about yoga, but while we're talking, there's so much on Instagram that puts people off, or not just Instagram, but social media as a whole. It puts people off of yoga because, we see people upside down with their legs in the air or twisting themselves into knots. And that's all very nice. And it gets likes and it gets people's attention, but that couldn't be further away from what yoga is. And so for me, if I get a message from someone telling me that they've now started a yoga practice, that's amazing. And it makes me so, so happy. That's why I'm here. So thank you for your messages. Keep your messages coming in. It's lovely. So that's really all I've got to say today. It's a relatively short one. It's just really a massive thank you from me to you for listening today, listening for past podcasts. If you're going to go back and listen to them now, thank you. If you've been a guest, thank you. And I am really, really excited for 2024. Like, how good can it get? So thanks again. Make sure you listen to read the show notes so that you know which episodes you want to go listen to them all. But yeah, best wishes for the new year, and I look forward to chatting with you next year.